let's move on to the JJ Redick, Doc Rivers, because
Oh, boy.
this is something I've been waiting for here.
Oh,
I'm going
boy.
to play the clip of JJ Redick talking about it, so those back home that might not have seen it can hear it and see it real quick. So let me bring that up.
Side note, real quick. No one's going to react to Doc's audio there. We've been here 7 minutes since we showed that audio. Nobody's going to react to Doc's audio.
Do you want me to get it
Doc,
for you?
We don't have to repeat it. We don't have to repeat it. I've seen the trend now. I've seen the trend for years.
What's the trend?
The trend is always making excuses. Doc, we get it. Taking over a team in the middle of the season is hard. It's hard. We get it. Just like getting traded in the middle of the season is hard for a player. We get it. But it's always an excuse. It's always throwing your team under the bus. They lose to Memphis. Oh, it's his players. Memphis was playing G League guys and two-way guys. Then you look at his quotes over the weekend. Now he wants to take credit for the James Harden trade to the Clippers working out. He wants credit for that. There's never accountability with that guy.
Well,
There's never accountability.
Well, let me say a couple of things. Number one.
I love JJ so much.
Everything he said right there was 100% fact. What he has nothing to do with the trade to the Clippers. Literally nothing. He wasn't even on the team. On top of that,
he said though that they asked Doc about James Harden, and he said he put a good word in for him.
Of course he did.
Even though the Clippers have been talking about him since last season.
True. Exactly. And there was video not too long ago, or there was a quote or whatever, like a day or two ago, where he was talking about the Paul George trade to the Clippers. And he asked Kawhi, like, are you sure about this? Because Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be a really great player in the NBA. Because Doc Rivers just can never be wrong. He has to just know everything. And he was like, are you sure, Kawhi? Do you really want Paul George, who's one of the best players in the NBA? Because, I can see down the road that Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be an MVP one day. And on top of that, like, Tyrese Maxey, like, I'm not going to play you because you got to, like, learn your lesson, and then you're going to be really great one day, and you're going to win us a playoff game. And on top of that, it's just so hard coming in to be a coach of a team midway through a season. I don't know why the Bucks did this. I told the front office that, like, I don't know why you're doing this. Like, shut the fuck up.
Oh my god. It's just, how many years in a row did we as Sixers fans, like you and I, have to suffer through the same formulaic trash that he tried to run? Like, you've won a championship, okay? That's great, Doc. Let's go ahead and rewind and look and just take a nice hard look at who was on that team, okay? I don't like, you were in a wheelbarrow and those motherfuckers were pushing you, carrying you, whatever you want, like whatever word you want to use, okay? That was a big three that I could have coached to a championship. I'm sorry. It was like they were a big four because Rondo was insane back then.
Right.
Like, that team was nuts. So, and then you have an insane amount of talent on the Clippers. You're there for a long time. And you cannot win still, somehow. Like, you had a team that was built to do anything. You had some of the best three-point shooters in history, literally. Like, and you had Blake Griffin in his prime, who at that point, that dude could fly, basically. You had Chris Paul, who was in his point guard prime. You had DeAndre Jordan, who had knees that still worked.
And he was in the running for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah. Every single, for 4 years straight? And then you had Jamal Crawford and JJ Redick. There. You had that, and they never got past. Did they make a conference finals? I don't.
Nope.
Yeah. So, and then you come here, and you have the MVP, Harden, Tobias, who is versatile. You just actually have to know how to use him right. because the dude he's top 15 in defense this year because they're letting him actually use that part of his game. And then especially last year, you have Tyrese Maxey, and you're just looking at him like he's an afterthought.
And his very first year had Ben Simmons, who could still actually play basketball.
Yeah. But even with Ben, it's like you know what his skill set is, and you know what he isn't going to do. So just, like, put him in a position on the floor to do what he's actually good at. Like, why is he out by the three-point line? I want him moving. He's 6'9", and he's fast as shit. Like, make defenders tired. It's not hard to have that kind of mindset. But that, like, I look at last year, too. Like, let's take the Maxey thing, right? So you're going to somehow say you knew Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was going to be the superstar that came to you in a dream, but you're going to look at Maxey and pretend that you can't see the same thing, and he's already on your team and he's not going anywhere, but you're not going to use him. Just the way JJ said no accountability was so spot on, because it just literally, if Doc Rivers is involved, it's not his fault according to him. It cannot be his fault because X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And it's been like that for let's say 16 years since the Boston championship, because nothing's gone really right since that moment. And I just don't understand. Even looking at the Bucks, like, why were you listening to whatever or whoever you were listening to that said dump that coach? To get to then move on to this guy who hasn't made it past the second round in a literal, like, eternity in the sports world. It just makes no sense. And that's why JJ looks so heated, because he's just like, he's been on his teams, he's experienced the BS in every aspect, so if anyone's going to be able to speak to it, it's literally him. And that's why for someone to rebuttal JJ, like Beverly did, like
Austin Rivers.
Yeah, well, Austin Rivers, I'm like, yeah, it's your dad. Shut the fuck up. Like,
exactly.
Like, whatever opinion you might have, we know what you're gonna say because that's your dad. Like, we don't need to hear from you. And then, like, I know Pat Bev has a podcast. He's gonna talk about it because it's a thing that just happened. Like, I get it, but you cannot possibly have the perspective. You cannot. And like that, JJ has so much ammo, and he's been holding it and hoarding it for so long, and it finally kind of came out, and it was just, yeah. It was nice that Shannon and Steven just kind of sat there and let him do it, because I think it needed to happen. Because I think the whole NBA world's felt that for a while about Doc.
Oh yeah.
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead.
All right, so it makes me wonder, though, like, what happened between JJ and Doc, though, that made JJ so... I mean, he played for him on separate occasions. I think it's kind of a bad look, though, as much as... I don't know. Something had to have happened to where JJ attacked him like that. But anyway, I don't blame Doc Rivers, though, for the Bucks being trash. I don't blame him for not being as high on Maxey, especially after Maxey wasn't where he was last season, where he is this season, which we've talked about that before. But when you look at the Bucks, you know, for one, Budenholzer shouldn't have been fired.
Nope.
Especially for a guy who had no coaching experience, who is not a good coach. And to bring in Doc, I mean, okay, I'd rather have Doc than Adrian Griffin, but the Bucks' problems have been the Bucks' problems for years, and I don't think it's fair, though, for anybody, whether you think he's accountable or not, to blame Doc Rivers, especially when he's only been there for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I'm not putting all of the Bucks' issues squarely on Doc Rivers' shoulders. That I can wait for until the end of the season to see what happens and how it plays out.
Yeah.
Especially, like you said, he's only been there for like a hot minute. He has not been there long at all. I think his record with the Bucks right now is like 4-7 or 5-7 or something like that. So he really hasn't been there all that much. I think JJ Redick has perfectly enough ammo to go on, like Tom said. Like, yeah, he played for Doc in Orlando, played for Doc a little bit in the Clippers. When he played for the Sixers, he actually played for Brett Brown. His 2 seasons on the Sixers were with Brett Brown. And those were his highest scoring seasons of his career. He was still hitting threes at a tremendous clip, around 40 to 42%, putting up the most threes he ever had in his career, had a big offensive role. Defense, obviously, JJ Redick's not known for his defense. That's just never going to happen. But you had guys like Pat Bev and Austin Rivers talking about, like, oh, Doc made your career. And it's like, JJ Redick was this guy at Duke. It was the same guy in the NBA that he was at Duke. Literally the same exact guy. He happened to be on Doc Rivers' teams, and he was known as the best three-point shooter, or one of the best three-point shooters in the league. Anybody would go get a guy like JJ Redick. It just happened to be that he was on Doc Rivers' teams. And as we saw after he left Doc Rivers' teams, even at the age of 33 and 34 with the Sixers, he was good enough to score with the best of them in terms of shooting and be able to be a contributor on a team that is a playoff contender. Now, there's something I found on Reddit because I wanted to really bring this up for this segment because, to be honest, I was giving a little bit of credit to Doc Rivers for his Celtics tenure because he did coach them to a championship. Should they have won more championships? I think yes. Could it be arguable? Sure. However, this user on Reddit, I'm sorry, I don't remember what your username was. I didn't have it on the screenshot, but it said, if you take a deep dive into the championship run in 2008, it's actually pretty unimpressive from a coaching perspective. Now, it took this team of 4 current/future Hall of Famers with Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Rajon Rondo, 26 postseason games to win the finals. That is the most amount of games played by a single team in a postseason all time. It took them the most amount of games all time to win the finals. In the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, and now let's also rewind a little bit. It's not because they played the best teams ever. They were the number 1 seed. So they're not playing the top teams the entire playoffs. In the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, the Celtics didn't even win a single road playoff game. Overall, the 07-08 Celtics were 3-9 on the road in the playoffs. In the first round, the Celtics were up 2-0 against the 37-45 Atlanta Hawks. The Celtics were 66-16 in the regular season, by the way. It took Doc and the Celtics 7 games to beat the Hawks after being up 2-0. In the second round, they were up 2-0 again against LeBron James and the Cavs. Went to Game 7 again. Paul Pierce scored 41 points to go against LeBron's 45. They ended up winning by 5 points. In the conference finals, the Celtics finally won a road game and finally won a series in less than 7 games. They beat the Pistons in 6. In the finals, they won the first 2 games, lost the next 2 out of 3 in Los Angeles, but the 1 road win was at least good enough to win in 6 games. Now, in this playoff run, Ray Allen shot 40% from 3. Kevin Garnett shot nearly 50% from the field, averaged 10.5 rebounds, 20.4 points. Paul Pierce, 36% from 3, 44% from the field, 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists a game. Rondo, 6 assists, 1.7 steals. Perkins shot nearly 60% from the field. Bench players Eddie House and James Posey shot over 35% from 3-point. So it's not even like your players didn't perform. All of your players performed to an extremely high level, and you still blew multiple 2-0 leads to go to Game 7s against teams that were a lot worse than yours and ended up needing 26 games to win the finals.